At my cousin's wedding, my dad's mental health crisis turned into family drama over money and exploitation. So this happened a few months ago, and honestly, I still don't know how to fully process it. For context, my dad Donald, 46, has always had struggles. He's had bouts of depression, anxiety, and there were times he just shut down for days. But he also has this weird pride about not asking for help. And our family? Let's just say they know how to twist that pride for their own gain. Setting, my cousin Rachel's wedding. Big, fancy, overpriced ordeal at some venue outside the city. Everyone dressed to the nines, tables covered in white linens, string lights hanging overhead, all that Pinterest perfect wedding stuff. I was sitting at our table with my dad, my mom Linda, and my uncle Jerry. From the start, my dad seemed off. He was quiet, tugging at his tie, sipping too much from the glass of wine the waiter kept refilling. I leaned over and asked, "Dad, you okay?" He gave me this tight smile and muttered, "Yeah, just a lot on my mind." Here's the thing. Dad had lent Rachel's parents, my aunt and uncle, a pretty big chunk of money last year when their business was failing. Like tens of thousands. He never told anyone except me and Mom. And now? They're throwing this lavish wedding like nothing happened. When the ceremony ended and we all moved inside for dinner, my dad started unraveling. Aunt Susan, the bride's mom, made this toast about the family always supporting each other, financially and emotionally. My dad let out this bitter laugh that turned a few heads. Mom squeezed his hand under the table, whispering, "Donald, not now." But it only got worse. Uncle Jay leaned over, all smug, and said, "Don, you're awfully quiet. Still sore about that little loan? You'll get it back eventually, don't worry." Like, who says that at a wedding? Dad's face turned red. He stood up, knocking his chair over, and snapped, "A loan? Jerry, it wasn't a loan. It was me bailing your whole family out when you were about to lose your house, and here you are, spending God knows how much on this circus while pretending I don't exist." The whole room went dead silent. Rachel was standing by the cake, frozen with a knife in her hand. My uncle stammered something like, "Donald, not here, please." But Dad kept going. "Do you know what it feels like to wake up every day with panic attacks because your savings are gone, to sit at the pharmacy counting coins for your meds while you people order champagne by the crate?" His voice cracked. His hands were shaking so bad, I thought he was going to collapse. Mom tried to pull him back into his seat, but he yanked away. S were whispering, some pulling out their phones. I felt like the ground was disappearing under me. That was the beginning of the breakdown, and it only escalated from there. I swear time slowed down in that moment. My dad was just standing there, hands trembling, face red and wet with sweat, and all eyes locked on him. I felt like a kid again, watching one of his episodes play out, but this time it wasn't behind closed doors, it was at a damn wedding with 150 guests. Mom kept whispering, "Donald, sit down, please, sit down," like if she said it enough times, he'd magically calm down. But he was already past the point of return. Rachel's new husband, Matt, tried to step in. "Hey, maybe we should take this outside." Dad cut him off, pointing a finger right at my Aunt Susan. "You knew what you were doing. You came to me when you were desperate. You cried on my couch. Begged me, swore you'd pay me back before this wedding even happened, and now you're standing there in a $1,000 dress acting like I'm the crazy one." The air was thick. You could hear glasses clinking nervously and little whispers of "oh my God" echoing around the room. Aunt Susan looked mortified. Her perfect makeup was cracking as she forced this fake smile, whispering, "Donald, we'll talk about this later, please, not tonight." "Later?" Dad barked, his voice echoing off the vineyard walls. "You've been saying later for a year while I've been drowning. Do you even care that I had to refinance the house? That I've been rationing my medication because I can't afford the refills?" My stomach dropped. He had never admitted that to anyone. Not even to me. Mom's hand flew to her mouth, like she was just finding out too. Uncle Jerry finally stood up, his face beat red. "Don, sit your asterisk SS down before you ruin this wedding." But my dad just laughed a bitter, broken laugh. "Oh, I've already ruined it, huh? That's what I'm to this family, right? The screw up, the one you use until he breaks." And then he broke. Right there. He slammed his fist on the table so hard the glass shattered. The sound made people jump. A little kid at the next table started crying. Dad's voice cracked as he said, almost to himself, "I can't do this anymore. I can't keep being everyone's safety net while I'm falling apart inside." I panicked. I grabbed his arm, trying to ground him. "Dad, hey, it's okay. Let's just step outside. Yeah, just you and me." But he pulled away, shaking his head. "No, they need to hear this. They need to know what they've done." By now, security from the venue was hovering nearby, unsure whether to intervene. Mom was sobbing quietly, whispering prayers under her breath. Rachel was pale as a ghost, her wedding night basically destroyed. The whispers around us turned into open gossip. Is he drunk? Did he just say he can't afford his meds? Didn't Susan borrow money from him? It felt like watching our family reputation unravel in real time. And then Dad said something that chilled me to my core. I should have just let it all burn down. Maybe then someone would have noticed me before it was too late. The room went silent. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about money anymore. My dad was in a full-blown mental health crisis. The silence after Dad's last words felt suffocating. Everyone stared at him, frozen, as if the air itself had stopped. I could barely breathe, my heart hammering so loud I thought it would give me away. Mom was shaking, tears running down her cheeks, and I realized we were teetering on the edge of something catastrophic. "Donald, please," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Let's just step outside, just for a minute. We'll figure this out." He looked at me, eyes wild, and laughed this low, hollow sound that made my stomach twist. "Step outside? No. I've been stepping outside for a year, behind closed doors, pretending everything's fine while everyone else profits from my stress. You think a few minutes in the hallway fixes this?" Uncle Jerry was fuming. "Donald, enough. This is my sister's wedding. You're acting like a child." That's when things went fully off the rails. Dad slammed both hands on the table, making the cutlery and glasses jump. "A child? I've been carrying your sorry asses for years, and now I'm supposed to clap and smile while you waste money I lent you?" I could see Rachel and Matt exchanging panicked glances. guests whispering behind their hands, some recording on their phones. Mom was grabbing his arm again, but he shook her off like she was nothing. And then he collapsed. Not dramatically, but fully. Face hitting the table with a thud that made me freeze. For a split second, no one moved. My stomach lurched had he fainted. Was he hurt? Donald! I yelled, dropping to my knees. I shook him lightly, trying to check if he was conscious. He groaned, half-lidded eyes looking at me, a mix of shame and anger. I can't keep doing this, he whispered. Security finally stepped in, gently but firmly guiding him to a chair near the back of the hall. Mom followed immediately, holding his hands, whispering to him. I stood there, chest tight, watching our family scramble to salvage the situation. Aunt Susan tried to address the guests, forcing a shaky smile. Everything is fine, just a little family issue, please enjoy the evening. But it was obvious to everyone that nothing was fine. Uncle Jerry muttered under his breath, this is unbelievable, and stormed off. I stayed by Dad's side, quietly holding him while he rocked slightly in the chair. His breathing was uneven, and I could feel the tremors in his hands. I didn't mean to ruin everything, he whispered, voice cracking. You didn't ruin everything, Dad, you're sick. That's not your fault, I said, trying to be calm, though my voice was shaking too. You've been hurting alone, and that's not okay, but we'll handle this together. For the first time that night, he nodded slowly, tears rolling down his cheeks. Mom held his other hand, rubbing his back gently. It was a quiet, fragile moment amidst the chaos, and I realised how much he had been suffering in silence while everyone else ignored the debt, the stress, the mental toll. The rest of the evening went on, people whispering, dancing awkwardly, but my focus stayed on Dad. That night, I realised that this wasn't just about money. It was about boundaries, mental health, and the painful ways families can exploit love and generosity without even realising the damage they're causing. The next morning was tense to say the least. Dad stayed home from the brunch Rachel's family had organised, still shaken, while Mom and I went to pick up the remnants of the wedding chaos plates, napkins, and the awkward apologies from family friends who hadn't known what they were walking into. As soon as we got back, Dad sat at the kitchen table, head in his hands. I poured him some coffee, hoping the warm cup might ground him. Mom hovered nearby, wringing her hands, clearly unsure how to approach the financial and emotional mess that had exploded the night before. Donald, I said gently, we need to talk about what happened, about the loan, and everything. He groaned, pushing his hair back. I just can't deal with them right now. Yeah, I get it, I said. But we can't ignore it either. Aunt Susan and Uncle Jerry, they took advantage of you, plain and simple. Dad looked up, eyes red-rimmed. I thought they were family. I didn't think they'd treat me like some ATM, and now I'm the villain because I lost it at a wedding. Mom sat down across from him. Donald, it's not about being a villain, you're human. You've been stretched to your limits for years, and they didn't notice. They treated your generosity like it was nothing. That's not your fault. I nodded. Exactly, and you need to set boundaries, not just for your sanity, but for everyone in this family. You can't keep bailing them out while they pretend it's okay to spend your money like it's theirs. He let out a long sigh, voice shaky. I thought being nice meant they'd respect me. I was wrong. Over the next few days, we started slowly confronting the situation. I called Aunt Susan first. We need to discuss the money Dad lent you, I said. Her initial response was defensive. She tried to laugh it off, claiming the wedding expenses were justified, but I didn't let her off the hook. You've been exploiting him, I said bluntly. He's not your bank. You promised to repay him, and yet you flaunt your spending. That's not okay. You need to make this right. She hesitated, the fake bravado cracking just enough to show she realised she couldn't argue anymore. I didn't realise, I know we owe him, but... Then stop paying it back. Dad's voice cut in, stronger now. And stop pretending like my mental health is irrelevant. I've been hurting for a year, and no one noticed because it was convenient for you to ignore me. Uncle Jerry tried to chime in, but Dad didn't flinch. Not a word. You've done enough. It was messy. It was uncomfortable. But for the first time in a long while, Dad felt seen. Not as the guy who would always cover everyone else's mistakes, but as a person whose limits mattered. That week, he started therapy again and set up a repayment plan with Aunt Susan and Uncle Jerry. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. For the first time, he wasn't just surviving for others, he was surviving for himself. And honestly, watching him reclaim his boundaries felt like a kind of victory I never thought I'd see. Over the next few weeks, life settled into a strange kind of normal. Dad started attending therapy consistently, and Mom was more attentive to his mental health without hovering. I noticed small changes, him joking again, laughing at dumb things on TV, even letting me help with bills instead of silently struggling. But the family wasn't done. Aunt Susan and Uncle Jerry were walking on eggshells whenever Dad was around. Every conversation felt strained, like they were waiting for him to explode again. Rachel, bless her, tried to act like nothing happened, but even she was distant, clearly embarrassed by the wedding meltdown. One afternoon, Dad decided to meet with him to discuss the repayment plan in person. He called it his boundary meeting, and Mom and I drove him over. As soon as they opened the door, Uncle Jerry smirked. So, Mr. Therapist wants his money now. Dad didn't flinch. It's not about the money being now, it's about accountability. I lent it to you with trust, you mismanaged it, and now we need to make this right. Aunt Susan shifted uncomfortably. Donald, Stop, Dad said firmly. I don't want excuses, I want a plan, and I want you to understand that my mental health isn't negotiable. You can't keep exploiting me because it's convenient. Jerry scoffed. Exploiting? Really? Yes, Dad said, calm but deadly serious. Let me break it down for you. I've been cutting back on my meds, refinancing my house, working extra shifts, and hiding panic attacks because I trusted you, and now, after the wedding, you act like I'm the problem. That's exploitation. There was a long pause. I could see the guilt settling over Aunt Susan's face like dust. Jerry looked like he wanted to argue, but Dad's tone was steel. They finally agreed to a repayment schedule, slow, but tangible. And Dad insisted on weekly check-ins. It was exhausting for him, but necessary. He was taking back control. That night, back home, Dad finally let himself breathe. It's exhausting, he said quietly, pouring a glass of water. But I don't feel invisible anymore. Mom hugged him tightly. You're not invisible, Donald. You're the most important person in this family, and we'll make sure they see that too. I sat beside him, feeling a mix of relief and pride. Watching him stand up for himself was like seeing him grow 10 years in a single week. But the tension didn't vanish completely. Family gatherings became carefully orchestrated, with Dad keeping conversations about money and favours strictly off limits. Some relatives grumbled behind his back, whispered about him being too sensitive, but Dad didn't care. He had learned the hard way that protecting his mental health mattered more than keeping up appearances for the family. By the end of the month, he even started attending a support group. Meeting other people who'd been financially exploited or emotionally manipulated gave him perspective and a sense of solidarity he hadn't realised he was missing. For the first time in years, Dad wasn't just surviving the family drama. He was actively protecting himself from it. And watching him reclaim that power, I knew we'd finally crossed a turning point. A month later, the extended family had organised a reunion at my uncle's lake house. Usually, Dad would have dreaded it. Too many people, too much pressure to smile and nod while they subtly criticised him. But this time, he had a plan. He was going in prepared, grounded, and determined to assert boundaries. As soon as we arrived, the usual chaos started. Cousins running around, aunts fussing over food, and Uncle Jerry smirking like he still thought Dad would fold under pressure. But Dad was different. There was a quiet confidence in his step, a calm aura that immediately drew my attention. At dinner, Uncle Jerry tried his usual bait. So, Donald, you're still in therapy. Hope it's helping you not overreact at family events. Dad's fork paused midair. He took a deep breath, then calmly said, Jerry, I'm in therapy so I don't collapse at family events, and it's working. The table went silent. Also, I want to make something very clear. My finances, my mental health, and my limits are not negotiable. If you can't respect that, we don't have a relationship worth maintaining. Aunt Susan shifted uncomfortably. Donald, don't make a scene. This isn't a scene, Dad interrupted, voice firm but controlled. This is the reality you've ignored. I lent money to this family out of trust. You treated it like a joke. You spent extravagantly while I struggled to stay afloat. That ends now. Cousins and younger relatives were whispering, some wide-eyed, some impressed. Mom squeezed Dad's hand under the table, silently supporting him. I felt a mix of fear and admiration. Uncle Jerry opened his mouth, but Dad raised a hand. No more excuses. You will repay what you owe, in the plan we agreed on, and you will respect my boundaries. If you can't, then we'll reevaluate this relationship. There was a long, awkward pause. Aunt Susan finally nodded. We understand. We'll follow the plan. Dad didn't gloat. He simply sat back, took a sip of water, and smiled faintly at Mom and me. I feel lighter, he whispered. After dinner, Dad took a walk along the lake, alone for a few minutes. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow on the water. I joined him, quietly walking beside him. You know, he said, I thought standing up to them would feel scary, but it feels empowering. I've been living for everyone else for years, now I'm living for myself too. I nodded. You deserve that, Dad. You've carried so much, it's about time you were seen. He smiled, eyes reflecting the lake's colours. Maybe next time, I won't wait for a wedding meltdown to get their attention. For the first time in years, Dad looked like himself again. Stronger. Safer. Sane. The mental health crisis had been terrifying, but it forced our family to confront uncomfortable truths that, though painful, ultimately allowed Dad to reclaim his life. By the end of that weekend, it was clear. Boundaries had been drawn, respect had been demanded, and Dad had finally learned that protecting himself wasn't selfish, it was necessary. In the weeks after the lake house reunion, things in our family started to shift slowly, but noticeably. Dad was calmer, more present, and less anxious. Mom said it was like he'd been carrying a £100 backpack his whole life and finally set it down. The repayment plan with Aunt Susan and Uncle Jerry was being followed more closely. Weekly check-ins weren't fun, but Dad approached them with quiet authority now, not desperation. He kept boundaries firm: no more loans, no more emotional blackmail. And for the first time, the family actually listened. We had a smaller family gathering for my cousin's birthday, just our immediate relatives. Dad laughed freely, joking with me and my cousins. There was no tension about money, no unspoken expectations. Even Uncle Jerry, though still a bit grumpy, respected the space Dad had created. I think it surprised him how seriously Dad enforced his limits. One evening, Dad sat down with me and Mom on the porch, the sun sinking low in the sky. You know, he said quietly, I used to think being generous meant giving until it hurt. I don't anymore. Generosity is good, but it shouldn't come at the cost of my health or sanity. Mom nodded, tears glinting in her eyes. We're proud of you, Donald. You finally stood up for yourself. That takes courage. And it took a crisis to make it happen, Dad admitted, voice soft. I hate that it had to get that bad, but maybe it was the wake-up call we all needed. I leaned back, realising how much our family dynamics had changed. Dad's breakdown at the wedding had been terrifying, but it forced confrontation of things we'd ignored for years: financial exploitation, emotional manipulation, and his mental health struggles. It had been messy, public, and humiliating in some ways, but necessary. Over time, Dad's relationships with family members evolved. He still spoke firmly with Aunt Susan and Uncle Jerry when boundaries were crossed, but the tension eased as respect grew. Rachel even apologised one day, quietly, admitting she hadn't realised how much stress her wedding caused him. Dad didn't dwell on the past though. He focused on therapy, his health, and spending quality time with Mom and me. And for the first time, I saw him not just as my father, but as a person actively shaping his life and protecting his mental well-being. It wasn't a perfect ending, family drama never is, but it was a start. Dad had survived his mental health crisis, reclaimed his voice, and set boundaries that would protect him going forward. That night, as we sat on the porch watching fireflies flicker over the yard, Dad sighed and smiled, a real, relaxed smile. I feel like I can breathe again, he said. And for once, I believed him.